Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it.
What if I told you that 2 brothers with just 18 pounds between them and a spare room in Burnley built a multi-million pound agency in less than 3 years? Not with ads, not with a big network, not with a fancy degree from university, okay? But almost certainly, well, the majority of it is through LinkedIn. Now, what's really interesting is today's with Niall, who's one of the brothers, by the way. They've not received any cash injection. There's no venture capitalist behind it. Literally, quite a compelling story of, growing an agency into that short period of time. So today's guest is Niall Radcliffe, of 24 years old, and built a agency with his brother Morgan. Now, we've been connected through LinkedIn for quite some time. I think probably we probably hanged out a little bit on Clubhouse back in the day. They worked with companies like the NHS and also companies like Ocean Beach and Ibiza, for example, and has helped create over £4 million of revenue from LinkedIn strategies, LinkedIn outreach. My question to you guys that's listening in is, what's your excuse for not using LinkedIn to build your business? That's my big question to you guys. So Niall's going to share us, not just his story, but he's going to share us about how he did it, how him and his brother did it. So without further ado, Niall, welcome to the show.
Adam, incredible intro. I'm super excited about this. I mentioned to you beforehand, I've got a bunch of different tactics and strategies I'm going to reveal on this one, some that I've never talked about before. And my main aim of this is, as we get into it, is to share what some of the biggest and fastest growing B2B brands in Europe are doing behind the scenes that no one is willing to talk about online. We're about to talk about it in this episode, so I'm super excited.
Very good. I love that. And it's really interesting because, there's a load of questions that's kind of just came into my mind as you just went off on one. But I'm more interested to learn about your story, because I know our listeners here, which are all, we have listeners from over 57 countries here. To quickly share that quick story, the whole kind of like building the agency, which is now 3 years old, and it's quite compelling. Like, by the way, just for context, that's less than $20, right? Okay, 18 quid's about $25, right? That's it. And I guess my question to you would be okay, you'd love to know about the backstory, but more importantly, why is it that you chose not to just get a job? Because obviously you guys are very young, you're very smart, articulate, very knowledgeable. But what was the catalyst? I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, so if I go right back to when we started the business, I think firstly you have to understand the context. And we both came from working class backgrounds. Our dad essentially left school at 16, no qualifications. He always tells us how his first job was in a factory getting swarf out of machines, which I have no idea what that even is. But he always used to talk about how terrible it was. And we grew up in a really weird stage of, we weren't completely broke, poor, struggling for food. We were always kept, but we never had any spare money. And we're always a case of, we'd want to do something and it'd be like, oh, we can't do that. Or we're always budgeting. And we're in a family that was always very cautious of money because we didn't have a lot of it. And I think that put a real big drive in me and Morgan, where we were desperate to have more than what we were born with. And I think that really informs kind of how we end up getting into business in the first place. But how it all started was we played football, and we thought that was our path out of kind of the situation we were in to a different tax bracket. Morgan played at Mansfield Town. I played at Stockport County. We both were in the academy system. 18 years old, we both realised that while we wanted to be great footballers, we were probably never going to make it, especially in the UK. And we got this awesome opportunity to go to America. So we actually both went to America at 18 years old on scholarships. And if people don't understand how that works, is essentially universities will offer to pay for your schooling if you play football. So we did that. And at the
Is
time
this
we were
football
living...
as in soccer or as in
Yeah,
American
yeah.
football? So we just wanted to clarify that for our American listeners, okay? Because I know that I get messages saying, what's he talking about, football or is it soccer? What is he talking about? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
That is, the Americans would call it soccer. So we were playing out there. And one thing that people don't understand about American universities, generally speaking, we went to a private university. About $40,000 a year to go to, and we were fully covered. But we got in this really interesting situation where it was like two working class lads from Burnley with some of the wealthiest people in and around America, and we had people whose dads owned law firms, whose were high up at Pepsi. One was like president of Pepsi, and I always remember to tell this one story of we had a friend who had a university car. So his dad bought him a Jeep, which was about $75,000, and he bought him a second car to drive at university, so he didn't ruin the Jeep that was at home. It was funny because we couldn't afford. We actually had a moped at the time, which we bought on Craigslist that was turned out stolen, and the police confiscated it. And we bought it for something like $25, which had no key on it, to kickstart it. So it was obviously wasn't the greatest purchase, Adam. But and then we were compared to this person who had this second car his dad had bought him, essentially just to batter while he was at university.
Mm.
And that was added to the frustration. So we had this working class background, and we saw what money looked like for the first time in our lives at university, and we were desperate to have some for ourselves. And how the business started was while we were at university, like I said, kind of desperate to have some money of ourselves. We started just taking on jobs, and we were doing anything. And someone once paid us $40 to pick up sticks in a forest, and we were like, yes, no worries. And we collected these sticks and put them in burn piles in this forest, and anyone who would give us money, we would take it. But by doing that, we also got exposed to different jobs online. We would apply constantly on LinkedIn, even though we were in university, to jobs anywhere we could. And when I was about 19, I got this really unusual chance to work at a startup in London. And I always say it's an unusual opportunity because it was a marketing startup that didn't market companies, but they marketed people. It was a personal branding agency.
Okay.
And at the time, there weren't many. Personal branding wasn't really a thing at all. And very quickly at 19, with no marketing experience, I was working with some famous podcasters, professional footballers. And because personal branding was so new, we were doing everything for them. So we were doing PR, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever they wanted, essentially we would do. And we were just like their almost like PR team. But very quickly, in that role, I had two clients who really stuck with me. And the first one was someone had a music startup in London, and he raised 8 figures in his LinkedIn DMs. And I was in his account, and I was watching him firsthand shoot out the investment deck and have these conversations with people on LinkedIn. And I was just kind of like, I'm 19, so I can't even fathom what 8 figures looks like. But I'm just like, there's something interesting going on here. And I made a second client, and I watched him firsthand, and not good in LinkedIn DMs back and forth, but him just manually doing it in his spare time. And he signed about 7 figures in revenue through LinkedIn just while I'm sat there in his account. And I was like, these are just sending proposals back and forth in these LinkedIn DMs. I was like, everyone's talking at the time about TikTok and Clubhouse and all these other things. Yeah. And I was like, there's something interesting going on with LinkedIn. And that's where the first spark happened. A few months later, someone actually contacted me and essentially headhunted me from the personal branding agency and said, I want to offer you a full-time salary just to work for us. And I said, that sounds fantastic. I'd love to work with one client. But as any great brother does at the time, I called Morgan and I said, this guy's just offered me, what was a huge sum of money at the time to just work with him. I think maybe we should start a business. I think there's something here. And he said, yeah. And at the time we had no money at all. We were just barely getting by. I'd hate to go into how we were getting food every week, but we were getting by, and we said, okay, let's start a business. So we put, I think it was £9 each. We started this business account at £9 each. And I remember it being £9 each, Adam, because it was something like to buy the company domain plus the official thing with Company's House was that's the money we put in. And after that, we had £0 in the business account. And we said, okay, we got to promote this now. And we promoted it on LinkedIn. And it's so ironic that within 11 days, we hit a 6-figure run rate. So you got to think, from people who had no money, had no careers, no massive experience or background, we went from maybe we should start a business to, oh shit, we've got a business and we're growing quickly. And the rest is history from there. Over the next 3 years, we worked with some of the largest brands in Europe, now 7-figure agency team, the rest of it. And it all started from that, throwing £9 in a bank account. And then it was like a rocket ship since then.
What a great story. What is it that you had? What is it that was kind of, I suppose, obvious to you during that time when you saw these people making large amounts of money through the DMs? What was it that to you that you thought there was a massive gap in the market and you thought, you know what, we could duplicate this or we could do that? Like, what was the gaps that you were seeing?
I realized that on LinkedIn you have access. So what not many people talk about is, right, it's like, first of all, in university, everyone thinks LinkedIn is just a job site, like Indeed. But
Yeah.
also at the time, but still today, like if you ask my dad, he'd probably be like, one, what does my son do? The second thing he'd be like, LinkedIn's a job site. And he wouldn't really understand it either. But the matter of fact is I realized, well, like, because of that feeling, you have got massive access. So there's 61 million decision makers on LinkedIn. And there's not another platform on the planet that I could reach out to and start a conversation with the caliber of people you can on LinkedIn. And fundamentally, that's because it's a networking platform. So they built the platform to start conversations. So if on Instagram, if me and you, Adam, we bet each other £10,000 that we're going to have a conversation with the CEO of Microsoft, and we had to message him on Instagram, like, best of luck. Choose any other channel. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not built for you to have conversations. They're built for them to post content and you to like it. But that's not LinkedIn. LinkedIn was built for you to have conversations. So the access it gives you to this massive high caliber of people who, in our word, like, not to jargon it, is like, who make buying decisions. Like, there was that access level. And I noticed in those DMs that, like, there was an ability to make a large sums of money just by having conversations on a platform that was built to help you have conversations with the people you want to have conversations with. And people still haven't cotton on to that.
There's a lot of myths around what LinkedIn is and what LinkedIn isn't. But also there's a general belief system, because I remember, I don't know, even going back many years where everyone was comparing LinkedIn with the likes of Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and everyone was like, oh, but it's a social media channel, you know, it's a social media tool. And I'm like, no, it's not actually, not really. And let's talk about that, because I'm sure you've had these conversations with a lot of your clients when they come to you and make inquiries, you know, and they have these, what should we say, false myths, if you want to call it. How do you deal with those false myths? What often comes up and how do you kind of get around that?
Yeah, so I think the mistake people make about LinkedIn as a social media channel is because, especially in 2025, 2024, organic reach was so plentiful on LinkedIn that people were like, they associated reach with social media, you know, on
Yes, true.
Reels, if you have 10,000 impressions and LinkedIn, you can get 20. Well, wow, this is a better social media channel. And don't get me wrong, like, there's some clients, we work with Tony Truman from Ocean Beach on his founder brand. I think he does probably 500,000 to 1 million impressions a month. We have Paul McVeigh from professional football. I think he does about 400,000 impressions a month. So you can get massive amounts of impressions there. But the gap is, like I said, you have to fundamentally understand the history of LinkedIn. Like I joked with you when we last talked, but it started as a dating platform, was LinkedIn. It started as a dating platform. And like from the ground up, it was built to start a connection between two people and start conversations. And then I always tell people, look at the paid tools. So LinkedIn's a business, as anything other business. They want you to use their paid tools. So what do all their paid tools incentivize? Sales Navigator is literally like, start conversations with people. They have recruiter tools, start conversations with people. They have in-mails, start conversations with people. You know, they're not, Instagram is doing like boosting posts. Yes, they do paid ads and you do thought leader ads, but like LinkedIn has spent millions, it's not hundreds of millions, building tools to help you start conversations. And people just, it's like basic common sense of like, if you showed this to someone without giving them any context and was like, here's how they make money, here's that the platform looks like, they'd be like, that is a networking platform, not a social media platform. And that is very different from Instagram. And it started off with, again, Adam, the connection feature. Like, what's LinkedIn known for? It's connection. And they made it's not the same anymore, but it always was a two-way connection. Like, I want to connect with Adam, you have to accept it, because it was a networking platform. That's never been the same with any other platform other than Facebook in the early days, where you had to do a two-way friend request.
Right.
Where there was a massive opportunity with Facebook as well.
I think you made a really valid point there. So one thing that I took away from our conversation just now is that what you're saying is that LinkedIn should be used as a networking tool, not a social media broadcast, is what you're saying, which I think you make a really valid point there. And I don't know, I just feel like people are generally get so tongue-tied about how to start a conversation with someone, right? It's like there's this awkwardness around it. Do you see what I mean? It's like, well, yeah. What am I going to say to this person? Like, I don't know this person. How do I start a conversation? And I think that people overcomplicate things so much, which is why, you know, we have now so many AI tools and, you know, try to cheat and cut corners and stuff like that. And it pisses people off because it's like, what makes a personal brand, what gives you your USP. It's that authenticity, the human side of it, which I think really lacks now because, there's these AI tools. And don't get me wrong, some of them are great, some of them are not so good, right? And I'm sure, and I'm sure you've probably seen that. And I think that you made a really valid point. Talk to me. I want to quickly go backtrack really quickly because I know that you said at the very beginning is that LinkedIn, people use LinkedIn like a CV, which I absolutely agree. By the way, they still use it as a CV, but they also use it as a place to brag how much revenue they've made or how much this or whatever it is. And those types of posts, they really piss me off, right? It's like, I don't want to type the word in cash cow or whatever it is to get your
Claude to get my automation.
No, I don't like that. Like, to me, it's like clickbait stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's just, but tell me specifically, like, how are you guys specifically using LinkedIn to build authority and drive sales? Because I feel like, so I've been on LinkedIn a long time. I was a top voice for 2 years. And I feel like what's really interesting is you're either building authority or you're making money. Can you do both? That's the big multi-million-dollar question I have for you, because from what we've been talking about, it's like, maybe you can. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are about it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think a lot of people get wrong with their LinkedIn strategy is they think about it as a personal brand play rather than a revenue play, a revenue driving play. And I'm going to outline our kind of 3-step system as simplified as possible. And I want to be clear that, like, I'm not talking about building a personal brand here. I'm talking about driving revenue into the business. A side factor of that is, as part of it, is a lot of founder-led or employee-generated content. And that is where the authority comes from. But, like, people have to segment and separate. Like, are you on LinkedIn because you want to be famous and build a personal brand? Or do you want to drive revenue into your business? And they're two very different strategies. And actually, you can do one first and then the other and stack it and shift your priorities. And I'll talk about how I've done that. But it's never a great idea to try and do both at once. So I have 60,000 followers now, Adam, on LinkedIn. I probably spent the first, and if I'm being realistic, I probably do phases of 6 to 9 months of switching my priorities. So if we're in a massive growth stage of the agency where, like, we're right now trying to sign net 4 clients a month, we have to do a massive amount of leads to find the right clients that we can sign net 4 clients a month. So I need my LinkedIn to be a massive lead generating channel. It's currently our number 1 lead generating channel in the business. All I'm focused on is driving revenue right now. You might see in 9 months that I start being more personal, telling more stories and getting a wider audience. So let me explain both. I want to start with the personal brand channel. If you want to use LinkedIn to build authority and your personal brand and become a thought leader, there's 2 things I focus on. One is broad content to add people to your ecosystem. So the way I think about content is, right, let's say I say to you, Adam, I'm going to do here's my 6-step system to generate leads through LinkedIn outreach. That's really niche content. You have to care about LinkedIn, be thinking about LinkedIn outreach, and want a system.
Agreed.
Really niche. So not many people can engage on that, right? But if I want to add people to my ecosystem, I want to go broad. So I might say, this is a post I did back in the day, I spent the last 2 years building my company in Portugal. Now I'm leaving to open an office in the UK. Here's where I'm adding 2K a month in expenses to go in person and move back to the UK. That's a post a lot of people are interested in. My dad has no interest in business or LinkedIn, but he's curious about why would someone move from sunny Portugal to open an office in the UK when it's clearly expensive. Broad post to add people to the ecosystem. And then I'm going to use narrow posts like my 6-step system to do LinkedIn outreach to nurture those. So if I could separate it into 2 pillars, it would be growth content and nurture content. Growth to add people to the ecosystem, nurture to get people in my ecosystem to know what I do and who I do it for, and become a thought leader in that space. I'd focus my niche content around pure education and utility. So how valuable is it in the next 12 hours? If you read my post, Adam, how much value can you get out of it in the next 12 hours? That's the utility of it. So that's how I'd split kind of thought leadership. And I'm optimizing there for 2 things. I'm optimizing for being known, broad content, and then being known for one thing. It's almost like a 2-step system. Just know the name Niall Ratcliffe, and then know Niall Ratcliffe for something else. Yeah. That's how I'm splitting it if I'm thinking about being a thought leader. And like I said, I'll usually do a 6 to 9 month phase of focusing on that if I'm trying to grow my profile. If I'm trying to drive revenue into the business, I think in 3 different stages. Stage 1 is positioning. So I will go back and optimize my profile. The key things I'm focused on is who am I talking to and making it very clear from my profile that who I'm talking to, the outcome I provide for them, and so specifically not what I do as a service, but the outcome they can get from paying me. And then the third thing is why me? So social proof, credibility, why me over someone else? What gives me credibility to do that? The second thing I'd focus on is, let's say I've got positioning right. It looks great. My profile has great banner. It shows some logo. It tells them who I'm doing it for, the outcome. Great. Move on to the next step, which I call fishing. So the big difference in the two strategies is the content. If I'm trying to become a thought leader, build a personal brand, I am doing like the broad content, doing loads of different stuff. When I'm doing fishing and trying to drive revenue, I think of each piece of content as like throwing the fishing rod into the lake, and I'm trying to see which fish bite. The key part about that is I need my content to be around what I do in my niche and the service we provide. Because if it's not, I'm not fishing. Let me give you an example. I had a story in 2025, it might be 2024 now, that did 2.8 million impressions. And it's not me how I couldn't afford to get a haircut, and my brother used to cut my hair, and now we have a 7-figure agency. Massive, all right? If I have my sales team and I set them on that post and they go through the engagement, there's 0 leads there because there's 0 intent. That's not fishing. That's people who were inspired by a story. It's nothing to do with my business. There's no leads. If I post a post that is, here's how to master LinkedIn 2026 from a business perspective, even if it's just a cheat sheet, carousel, whatever it is, and I have 45 likes on that, my sales team can go through that, and there's 45 people who said, I'm curious about using LinkedIn in my marketing for 2026. That is essentially a lukewarm lead that we can then start a conversation with. And step 3 of the revenue system is just starting conversations. This is the number one reason why I like LinkedIn. I'm essentially going to find intent from my content and profile views. So I would go through who viewed my profile in the last 90 days, who engaged on my content in the last 90 days, and I'm starting conversations with them. There's lots of complicated ways to do this. The simplest way, which I would say was our highest converting message for years, is message people who viewed your profile. You say, hi, I saw you viewed my profile. Is there anything I can help with? Or are you just enjoying the content? And we've closed more revenue with that than probably any other message we've ever sent. And the second one is, hi, so you liked this post about this topic, so about mastering LinkedIn. Is that something you're chatting about internally? Or is that something you're curious about? Again, we talked about conversation starters. These are simple ways. And that 3-step funnel of positioning, fishing, and starting conversations it's a no-brainer. If I can get 2,000 engagements on my content over the month, that's 2,000 leads that we can start conversations with, that are high intent leads, and we're off the races. No one needs more leads than that. How much you pay for that, even with the cold data, never mind. And that is that simple. And we can get into the automations you can do nowadays and the AI tools and everything else you can do it. But at the basic level, if you just position your profile to show exactly the outcome you provide, who you do it for, and why you go fishing, you put out content around your niche, and you just start conversations with those who show any intent, it's a no-brainer. Like, you will drive revenue into the business with that.
You know, it's really interesting. For many years, in fact, I'm going to say many years, but I felt like I was doing a lot of personal branding stuff, so using personal stories, and trying different techniques. But I feel like it's not that I have particularly a sales psychology, I'm scared of selling to people type of thing. It's not that at all. But it's also, LinkedIn doesn't like you selling. And as soon as they see it, they bury your posts, right? And I guess there's this kind of fine line where you feel like you want to contribute, but ultimately you've also got a business to run. So there's this kind of fine balance between the two. And I think that once we do, for you guys, by the way, that are listening in intensively, we're going to be doing a coaching session probably in the next 10 minutes or so. And I'd be really interested to find out how, well, hopefully it should give you some ideas about how you guys can actually implement and get your client acquisition system up and running. If you don't already have one, by the way, because most of the clients and most of the listeners here they just rely on referrals and recommendation. And, that's a whole new conversation, by the way. So that's good. I just want to quickly summarize because we went through a lot of stuff there. Yeah. So we've got broad content, niche content, narrow content. So there's 3 different things. And I think Lara Acosta talks about that as well. And she uses a similar system. And then we've got, so with your broad content, you often use personal storytelling just to drive engagement, but doesn't necessarily drive leads. But then niche content and narrow content is more kind of, hitting on on a particular topic and talking to your ICP in a particular way that resonates with them, and then you can then go off and then personal message them. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. So I hope that was a good summary, and I hope that you've made a lot of notes there. So that's really cool. I suppose the other thing then is with you guys that are in the B2B space, because I think that there often is a very much a confusion around what, and I don't particularly like using the word B2B, B2C. I actually think it's just business to human, because ultimately we're all human beings, right? That's just my take on it, right? Tell me, what are the things that a lot of these B2B companies are holding back from people like us that are trying to build a brand, maybe the smaller businesses out there? What are they doing behind the scenes that you guys are maybe infiltrated or are not sharing? And what is it that we need to know? Are you ready to exit but have no idea what your actual number is? Most founders I know have a target in their head. Maybe it's 3, 5, 10 million pounds, but they never actually test it against the life that they actually want to live. So here's what happens. You know what your business is worth, but you don't know what you're worth once you're out. And that's the real gap. That's what's keeping you stuck in the business. Zentum works with founders at exactly this point. They help you see the real number, not the guesswork, the actual number you need based on how you want to live your life afterwards. Now, Dominic Baldwin, the founder of Zentum, is offering a limited amount of complimentary calls to sit down with you and listen to hear what your exit may look like. Now, if you're fed up with being stuck and you are looking to build a personalized wealth plan specifically for you, head over to zentum.co.uk to book your call today.
Yeah, so there's been a massive shift. Look, I think I said this on the last call, Adam. I want to be honest with where the market's at and where the fastest growing are at.
Okay.
So there's been a shift over the last 2 years where some people have stayed the same and some people have shifted. And the ones who shifted aren't telling the ones who are staying the same. And there's a reason for that, because they have a competitive advantage now. So the ones that have stayed the same are doing traditional things, right? So they're playing it safe and doing what's always been done. So they pay for booths at events. They pay to speak on stage sometimes. They'll pay to be in industry magazines, and they'll do a little bit of social media, which is what they think is innovating. They'll have an intern or a low-level exec posting on Facebook, Instagram, maybe even LinkedIn. They're doing the odd post on there. They're the ones that are staying the same, and that's kind of classic B2B.
And when we talk about they, who are we referring to as they?
I would say traditional B2B businesses. So ironically, a lot of our roster, before they come to us, we have let's say 60% of traditional B2B businesses are engineering firms, manufacturing firms. I call them the businesses that make the world go round that no one talks about. Logistics firm. How do we all get our parcels to our door? How do Asda get their groceries? The firms that no one talks about. So a lot of them are staying the same right now, and they don't want to break out the bucket. In fact, they don't know what's happening. The ones who are shifting now is we joke and we talk about the new tools that are existing, but with the rise of AI and a bunch of different other software and just technology in general, AI is a buzzword, just technology in general, there's been a massive advancement in how easy it is to start conversations and how you can track leads. So there's been a massive rise of GTM, which people talk about a lot nowadays, but the main thing is how people are using it. So to not go too much into the weeds and confuse people, I can now track anyone who engages on any of my content, who views any of my team's LinkedIn profiles, who goes on my website, who virtually touches any of our landing pages, resources, anything out there on the internet. And we can file that into a database in a tool like Clay, but then we'll filter it through anyone that's not in our ICP, send it directly to an outreach campaign and start a conversation with them. There are companies out there right now that will have it. If you hit a certain page on their website, then view their profile, you will then get a message in the next 24 hours. That will seem very complicated. I'm going to simplify it down to how other people can use it. The thing you have to understand is, I talked about phishing earlier, but we're going to live in the next age of B2B is going to be how you can optimize to start conversations. And the way you start a conversation is finding intent. So somebody who has already curious about what you do and targeting them at the right timing. And that is what these new technologies have been able to do. I'm going to give you a simple example that we use. Right now, you can use a tool like Triggerfy. There's many others on the market. I can add in social listening tool. It's a social listening tool. So I could put in today, Adam, all of my team's LinkedIn profiles, and I could get anyone who touches my LinkedIn's team profiles, any of their content engaged on it. I have a lead list of that. I can then pick out, and this is where it gets exciting, our top 5 competitors I can pick out their company pages on LinkedIn, their executive team, so 3 to 5 of their executives, and I can scrape and build a data list of anyone who engages on my top competitors and their top executives. And I can build a leads list of that as well. So let's say I'm a startup. I am in a startup. I run a LinkedIn marketing agency. We're the best in the UK right now, but let's say we want to go to the US. There's people much bigger than in the US.
Mm-hmm.
I can find a LinkedIn marketing agency in the US. I can add all of their execs. In fact, I could add every single one of their employees to a social listening tool, and I can reach out to all of them and start a conversation that says, hi, I saw you engaging on a bunch of content around LinkedIn. Is that something you're interested in right now? And I can steal my competitors' leads. And the third thing you can do with these new tools, which I think is really exciting, which not people are talking about, is I can scrape people who engage on content around certain keywords. So let's say for you, Adam, a big problem you solve is you help people, I'm just making this up, you help people who are struggling when they are, they're a 3-person team and they're wondering how to scale to $1 million a year. You can, or let's make it easier. Let's say you help solopreneurs, because that's a buzzword we can do. I can use a social listening tool to find anyone who engages on content. This is not just LinkedIn, this is any tool on the internet, any software, any social media on the internet. Anyone who engages on any content around a solopreneur. I can then use a tool like Clay, which is very, very common nowadays, to filter to make sure it's your ICP. And I could have it set up so you reach out to anyone who engages in a post on solopreneur in your ICP within 24 hours of them engaging. And you've got to think about that from a sales perspective is, in a world where the B2B businesses are still cold calling and at any time of the day, hi Niall, I've got to get about 3 a day nowadays. Hi Niall, do you want this? They've got no idea who I am. They've bought a list online and my number just happens to be on it. And instead, I can go over here and say, the second someone engages on a piece of content that is in my niche, they get a message from one of our team. And you can just see the massive gap in intent there versus cold calling and praying and hoping that call lands at the right time where we're thinking about that, where I happen to answer and I happen to have 5 minutes and the opener's good and I go down the conversation. Like, how many things have to line up perfectly to book a meeting for a cold call? Versus how many, we're lining up everything that's perfect. We deliver a message at the right time to the right person in the right place, and they've just engaged on something that we're interested in. And that is what people are not talking about in B2B. And like I said, you can see the gap there. And the people that haven't figured that out yet and aren't adapting are going to be left in the dust, licking their wounds, wondering why their big team of SDRs all sat there cold calling and sending out these 6 cold emails a day aren't getting any new revenue into their business.
So what you're basically talking about is sales triggers, as I like to call them, or sales signals. And what's his name? Max from Triggerfy, which you mentioned. He talks a lot about that in his YouTube videos a lot, which I absolutely find fascinating, by the way. But how do you? So let's just take a back step for 1 second, because I feel like we're probably jumping a gun here. And let's talk about what is a sales signal for the listeners. What is a sales signal for you?
Yeah, so I'm looking for anything that shows they are interested in what I'm selling.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's how I'd summarize it, which for me is my key ones. My number 1 is engage on content on a certain topic. So engage on my content, which is talking about my service or viewed my profile and within my ICP. Those are the number 1.
Beautiful. And I guess then the next question would be is then how do you as an agency then sort those sales signals? Like, for example, how do you know when is the right time to then outreach to that person based on the signals that it's given you? When do you then start that conversation? Is it that they have to hit certain markers? Is it that they've triggered a couple of keywords, or they've gone over to a couple of profiles from the team or whatever? It's like, what are you looking for? How do you then classify people as, okay, these guys are hot leads, these guys are kind of in the middle, and these guys are kind of probably need a bit more work? How do you then sort them?
Great question. So it depends on your situation. I need to funnel a lot of leads into our business right now. So anyone who has any sort of signal we're starting a conversation with, and I am deeming their intensity or hotness or scoring them based on their lead status and based on how the conversation starts. So for example, I say, hi Adam, so you engage on a piece of content around LinkedIn. Is that something you're curious about right now? You say, no, not right now, but I'm looking at content. Okay, well, I know where you're at from there. Or your response would be, yeah, actually, we chatted about that internally. Boom, massively hot. So I'm just going post conversation opener, which I think is better. So like people, I want my top of funnel to be full, and I'm happy to discount people out of the funnel. What I don't want is an empty top of funnel and an empty middle of funnel and an empty bottom of funnel. So, I'm being broad on the signaling, and I can filter out throughout. If you don't need any leads, if you're a type of business, we have some people on our roster that need 2 clients a year will hit their quota. Two new clients a year will hit their quota, and they're doing 500k build outs of clean rooms. In that case, then you know what? Will be really minimal, where actually you can view the website, you can actually have to engage on the content, you have to view the profile, you have to hit 3-4 sales triggers, as you called them, and then you get a message. But like, the only reason you want to narrow down, in my opinion, is if you're essentially, one is a massive sales cycle, so you have to put loads of time into each lead, and that's important, or for some reason you don't want more leads. Because I want as many leads as possible, and my better situation is a sales member coming to me and saying, we've got too many leads, can you reduce the amount we've got in, because it's taking up all our time? And I say, fantastic, and no.
Yeah. I think you made a really valid point. Who the hell doesn't want more leads in their business? Like, to me, it's complete ludicrousy. I mean, but anyway, that's just another conversation in itself. I want to quickly switch my conversation over to content, because content's a really interesting one. Yes. We've got over 1 billion members on LinkedIn, crazy amount of members. Less than 1% post on a regular basis, which I think is weekly. I guess then what we're seeing, and you see this a lot, we have to start somewhere, is that a lot of people publish content, and then really it kind of like, I don't know, what's the word I was looking for? It kind of gets sucked into a void where all they've got really is tumbleweeds. Speaking to tumbleweeds out there, and I'm sure that it's happened to you before as well. Does someone need to do to cut through the noise and to kind of get noticed and to kind of like grab their ICP, ideal customer personas, attention and say, hey, I'm here? Like, what do you guys do in your agency?
That's a good question. So there's a big theme right now around the volume negates luck. I think Alex Hormozy, Gary Vee promote it.
Yes.
I think really interesting just off the bat is I've doubled the content I produce over the last 3 months. I now post between 10 and 12 times a week on LinkedIn. There was no increase in impressions. There was no increase in impressions or engagement. I think that's an interesting thing. I think I've been posting the best content I could possibly post with every post. It's not like I've thrown up an extra one every day. I'm posting very high quality content virtually twice a day. It's not had a significant increase. I think the simple math to show people is if I have a post that gets 20,000 impressions and then I have 3 that get 1,000 impressions, the 1,000 impressions is negligible in a sense to the data. I think that if I want to cut through the noise, realistically, I would pick a cadence to start with. So 3 posts a week and just choose days to commit to. I always say to people who are getting started on LinkedIn, choose 3 days and die before you don't post on those days. I think just having that simple commitment to yourself is like, that is probably 99% of it.
Yes.
And the 1% is the optimization. Just pick 3 days, just say you're going to post and you figure anything out. Like the consistency will lead to the compounding effect. So I would start with that. And the second thing is when you're getting started, you need to give people context on who you are. So don't do what I might say now. Do what I did when I had no followers. And that's something people forget, right? It's like, you can look at Niall, but he has 60,000 followers. I'm going to copy what Niall's doing. I'm going to do carousels. I'm going to do cheat sheets. I'm going to do these videos that are highly edited. It's like, wait, no, this is Niall. He spent the last 4 years building an audience, who has 60,000 followers, who's built a business and documented it all online. Like, no, you're starting at 0 followers or 100 followers. You're in a very different situation. So do what I did then, not what I do now. And what I did then was I gave people context on who I was. So I told stories to give them a background, understand who I was, what my beliefs were, what my background was, give them something to relate to. I'm a working class lad. I have no money. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to build this business. And I would focus on that. So I would do 3 posts a week. I'd focus on context. If I had 3 pillars, they'd be like my backstory. I'd be like behind the scenes or like building in public, what I'm doing and what I'm working on. And then I would share the lessons I'm learning along the way. That's what I'd probably do for the first 6 months. And with time, that would pivot to probably more content and maybe 5 posts a week. And I would slowly integrate more educational stuff that I was learning. And I'd pivot from being known for being Niall and then being known for something. And people forget, Adam, there's this big thing about like, you want to be known for one thing, you want to be known for one thing. It's like, yeah, but there's levels to the game. You don't start at level 10 being a thought leader on SEO. You start at level 1 by going, hi, I'm Niall. I'm trying to figure this out, and I'm going from there. And then you build up to it. You don't start with, here's 10 SEO tips. Do you know, here's 10 tips to get ranked number 1 on Google. It's like, well, who the fuck are you? Do you know what I mean? Who's this guy? Who's this guy? Like, start from level 1, give me some context on who you are, and give me some reason to get behind your story.
It's a bit like when people want to write a book for the first time. I always say to people, it's like, so you do know how many books come out per year? And they're like, yeah. I was like, it's over 10,000. So then the question is why should anyone care about reading your book? It's the same as like LinkedIn, right? Why should anyone care about your post? Why should anyone care about your 10 tips? No one gives a shit.
No one does.
I'm really sorry. I'm sorry if I've hurt your feelings. I'm really sorry. Anyway, all jokes aside, all good. We love a bit of a laugh here. Actually, I really like that. I think, LinkedIn brought out Brew 360, as we know, recently, which is their latest case study. And we know now that it's not based around the amount of volume of content that you publish. Is actually based on the quality of content. And really fascinating, I think my good friend Adam Haluhan and Richard from the Netherlands. Richard.
Yeah, what's he called? Adam, you've got to get it. Richard Van der Bloom.
That's the right Van der Bloom. And they, they talk a lot about LinkedIn's wishes, white papers, data, and things like that. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you go and follow those guys, because they're great for just making sure that you're all up to scratch with all the latest tips and advice. By the way, I have not been paid to endorse those profiles, just for full disclosure. Anyway, I want to get into the juicy part of today, which is the coaching part, because we talked about this, didn't we? And things like that. So I'm just thinking about where we're going to start. So I guess in a nutshell, like in terms of LinkedIn content. So for full context, Niall, I recently lost my LinkedIn top voice. And no, I do not want you to send me a message, ladies and gentlemen. I do not want your pittiness or your violins, okay? In fact, I did a whole episode about it, trying to gather a pity party, of course. But no, I'm joking. I didn't. But so I recently lost it a couple of months ago. But actually, there's a real big story around that. And but actually, it's not bothered me so much, Niall, I'll be honest with you. But it's really interesting how things have changed over the last couple of months. And I think it's been really interesting just to see the result off the back of that, which is really fascinating. Anyway, I'm blabbering on. Where should we start with the coaching?
Adam, how I am happy to roast. If you're happy to roast, I've got your LinkedIn up here on a different tab. I can share my screen. I can go from there, or I can just roast you blind if you want.
Whichever. You know what? For you guys that are listening to this on audio, make sure you switch over to YouTube or on Spotify, because then you'll be able to see Niall's screen. And if not, then you're just going to have to just listen to the audio. But I will be listening attentively here. So make sure you got your notebook and pen handy. Now, I want you to just take some notes here, guys, because I want you to imagine that Niall is actually sitting down with you and he is doing a roasting. Okay, that's a roasting. Okay, with a big R, and he is giving you a deep dive. But take this as with a pinch of salt. Don't be defensive. Take it with a pinch of salt. That's all I was going to say. Over to you, Noel.
Yeah, 100%. And let me be clear, Adam, just as we get into this as well, Adam is also like a top 1% person on LinkedIn. So while I'm roasting Adam's profile, a lot of things you could say were unfair because Adam is doing better than the majority of people on LinkedIn. But what I will try and do is just give my honest thoughts on as I see it. Everyone will have different opinions, and as always, there's no right way to do it. We're working with hundreds of clients, like I said, some of the fastest growing B2B brands in Europe, and just going off our data and what we're seeing working. And like I said, okay, let me get into roasting Adam. So the first thing that I think of, Adam, when I see your profile is I'm always thinking about not how I see it as a LinkedIn expert, like how does someone see it who just hops on it? So just like my first glance, and people talk about it on TikTok is like, if you post like a reel or something, like if you just swipe past it, like what does your brain, and then ask yourself, like, what did you see? Or like, what did you think? When I first see this, the first thing I do is I love how you're wearing a suit in the cover photo. I think it massively elevates it for like, I'm thinking if I'm in my shoes, if I'm selling a business, I instantly think like, this guy is smart and respectable, because people don't wear suits. You know, I have nothing against bin men. We all need them. In fact, I wanted to be a bin man growing up. If you were in bright orange, I probably wouldn't want you to be involved in my business in general, but selling the business as well, I definitely wouldn't want you involved in. So I think the suit's great. I actually think that I think the banner in general, this one here so Adam has 2 banners. He's using what you can have with LinkedIn Premium, where you can have 2 banners switching. I think it's fantastic. I think that what you have here is 2 banners doing the same thing. So you've essentially created 2 of the same banners selling the same thing with the similar messaging. So
Yes.
what I mean by that is, on his first banner, for people listening, Adam has, let it flick back, need help to scale and exit your business, free resource in the featured section, a couple of logos, which is great. On his second banner, he says, build a business that runs without you, exit daily operations, something. So if you think about it from my perspective, as this is flicking through and I'm trying to figure out what Adam does just from his banner, it seems like there's a lot going on rather than just one thing. So that if I was switching one thing right off the bat, I would have one banner that's very clear. So I might keep the first one that says need help to exit your business. And the second one, I would do one of 2 things. One, I would just keep it very plain and have logos and credibility. So essentially, do you want to do this? Boom, here's a bunch of credibility, very little images. Or I would pull out, you have the free resources in your featured section, Adam, in the first one. I would maybe just use the second banner to say free resources in the featured section, then with a bunch of logos. So I'm almost doing, here's my actual banner, here's a CTA. And as they're flicking between them, rather than it being 2 separate banners, which it feels like right now, it would be one banner and then the next step. It's almost like the next step that they switch in between.
So what you're saying is like an authority banner and then a call to action banner. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. That's how I would switch it. But my key thing I'd be focused on is especially the second banner, just to minimize it as much as I could. So there's one thing on it. Like, I can't even, as this is clicking between as we're doing this roast, I still can't figure out what was on the second banner. I keep having to wait for it to come back for me to say, okay, actually, you've got a wait list on there. I've just seen that for the first time. I know there's something on the top left of the second banner. I still can't remember what it says. I've been looking at it for the last, 15 minutes now. So the second one, I'd really focus on just one clear message and then visuals, which I think is great. One thing I love about Adam's profile, so I'm talking positively as well, is his headline. He has this first line, people listening, he says 7 to 8 figure exits in 12 to 36 months. Just really specific, Adam. I really like that, actually. I just like how it's specific. I feel like I can get a really good grasp of it. He then says strategic exit advisor to M&A law firms, which is fantastic. I now have a general list of who it's for, which I sort of talked about before. I said the outcome, and I said the who, and then I said the why. I think this is your 7 to 8 figure exits in 12 to 6 months is the outcome. And then who you do it for is, strategic exit advisor to M&A law firms, which is great. I think that probably 60% after that is struggling to give me the why you. I would focus, if I was you, on what's one singular sentence or one thing I can say that puts me in the top 1 or differentiates me, puts me in the top 1% people doing this. So I know a lot of people in and around M&A nowadays. It's a very, very trendy topic and a lot of people in it. Right now, I can't gauge why you over anyone else I know. Is it amazing that you're a top 1.5% global podcast host? Yes. Do I care about that if I'm trying to sell my business? No. 3 times best-selling author is fine. I'd probably put that more in the featured section than in your headline. Founder's first choice. I'm not sure if that's an award or a point. So what I'd honestly think about Adam is cutting everything from here and just summarizing it in what puts Adam Strong in the top 1% of people to talk on this topic and advise me. Exiting the business is a massive, massive decision. You know that, Adam.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, I need pure, or everything that I've highlighted here for everyone watching on the screen. None of that gets me closer to trusting Adam with my business and the next steps of my life. So I've invested years and years in this business, millions of pounds of value in it. That for me wouldn't move it on. So I think the big top level to summarize, and not just talk about Adam, is Adam has a perfect first 2 sections. I just want clarity on why Adam over anyone else. Something my actual headline right now is promoting my YouTube video, as I can't show it. Like, a simple thing I might do is, like, what's something that I can say that no one else can say is I can say we work with the NHS, we work with Ocean Beach, Dr. Wills, a bunch of these other brands. No one else can say that because we're the LinkedIn marketing partner of these organizations. And then we specifically use contrasting organizations like the NHS, a big bureaucratic firm, with Ocean Beach Ibiza, which is a really modern hospitality firm. We specifically use those two, mainly because they're the most well-known, but also it just shows the depth of types of clients we work with. So if you're an engineering firm, you feel like you can fit in that. If you're a hospitality firm, you can fit in that. If you're a healthcare firm, you can fit in that. You understand that we work with some of the biggest brands in Europe, and that's all that matters.
Quick
and for
one
Adam,
here, Niall.
I don't have that. Go on, Adam.
Just a quick one, because I know there's a big debate around, you should potentially highlight the problem with a solution in a specific time frame. Is that something that you endorse as well, or not really? Does that give someone a USP?
Adam, I hate it. When we first started the agency, we bought this course by Justin Welsh called the LinkedIn OS, and he's made millions of dollars selling it. So shout out Justin Welsh. He's a very wealthy man because of that course.
He is.
In it, he says your headline should be something like, "I help these people do this problem because of this reason." I think that's fantastic if you're a solopreneur. But could you imagine Ben Francis of Gymshark saying, "I help gym goers feel confident in the gym"? No.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
You don't do it. An authority wouldn't put that in. Do you know who does that? A freelancer who's trying to make their first £1,000 a month or first £10,000 a month. It's a real, you got to think, sometimes it's like good advice is bad advice because of the signals it gives off. And that is good advice that is actually bad advice because it signals, while it might be very clear on what you do, like when you're a certain caliber, it's not, you don't want to signal, it's more important to signal you're a certain level of authority than it is to signal clearly the problem you solve. And like I said, I think for that example, and name anyone else, like Stephen Bartlett, I help middle-aged mums, learn about healthcare on my podcast. I've probably done Steve a bit dirty there. Sorry, Steve. But, it's silly. It's silly. No one would listen to that podcast because you think that isn't a popular podcast. Instead, he has founder of Steven.com. It's big, mysterious, and signals more than he ever could by using one of those headlines. So yeah, I avoid that at all costs.
Love that.
Adam, next thing on your profile I want to really, really clear on is I would say turn your profile into a landing page. What people don't understand about that is while it's very easy for me to look on the visuals and the headline, which is key to focus on, there's a couple of things that you do great that some people forget, right? And I have clear next steps on your profile. First of all, I love this custom link you have, which is become exit ready here. Beautiful. I feel like I know exactly what it is. If I'm trying to exit, I can get ready to exit. I can go to this link. I understand the outcome of it. It's a perfect next step. And the second thing is the featured section. This is the most valuable part for me, other than maybe a headline of any LinkedIn profile, because I can literally just include things where I want people to go. So you've got an assessment here, which is great. Daniel Priestley will be so happy. I can see you using ScoreUp as well. But it's fantastic. I can take an assessment. We all know, well, we should know if you're not listening to Diver CEO, Daniel Priestley, or anyone else, Daniel Priestley Talks. The assessment is a great way to do this and get an assessment, but the feature section is a no-brainer. If you have nothing in your feature section or you have featured posts, people do that, it is the biggest waste of space ever. So in my featured section right now, we have, it's 20 plus free LinkedIn playbooks if you click the link. I think we do about 56 email leads a month through my featured section.
Oh, wow,
so
that's huge. Yeah,
think about the cost. A cost per lead is usually $100 to $200 for a marketing agency. We got 56 through January, 56 in February through that. And that's through me doing nothing other than just people coming to my profile and clicking on that. Feature section is a priceless real estate.
I think you made a really valid point there, as so many people waste that space. Number one, there's that when you're using a mobile phone, for example, or cell phone, you can only really see the first two parts of the featured in section, number one. But number two, you made a really valid point, which is people put their old posts there, which it might be, they might have 20 engagements or whatever it is. And I just thought to myself, Why would you try and fill some prime real estate, as you rightly pointed out, with an old post which might have been 2 years old, which really no one really gives a monkeys about? I just don't quite understand it, really. I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah, it's beyond me. I think people just don't even know it exists, Adam. We have clients who come on board who have already used a LinkedIn agency and still don't have anything in their featured section. Like it's not a common notion, not something that people really know about. Adam, I've got a few more things I want to roast you about. The first one is your about section is actually quite good. So I actually quite like your about section. I love how you have a CTA, and people underestimate. You said send me a direct message with the word advisor. This works for two really good reasons. I think I have something similar in mind. The first one is when someone comes in your inbox, you can figure out if it's a lead or not because they message you the word advisor.
There
and
you
the second
go.
thing is it's a simple thing for you to do. Like, I know I can message you advisor. So let's say I want to work with Adam for people listening. And he doesn't have this at the bottom. He just says, let's talk. He ends it there. I then have to go message Adam, and then I'm like, what do I say? Like, am I telling him I'm exiting the business? But I don't want to tell him that. So then I'm having to I'm having to think and think about the friction as I'm just talking through this of like me.
Yes.
Okay, now it's an in-mail, so I need to write a subject line. Do I put exit in my business? Oh, well, no, I don't know if I want to tell Adam that yet. And next thing I've spent 5 minutes, I was like, oh, never mind. Instead, I can just put like, okay, message, advisor, send. Let Adam do the rest of it. So it's like a really frictionless CTA, which I think is underrated, which is great. The one thing I'd change about Adam's about section is I believe the about section is a great place to tell your story and give that credibility. I think that, Adam, you've written this with the knowledge of LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is a marketing channel. And I think sometimes you forget that other people on LinkedIn, like I use my dad as an example, he's like 65. He has no idea people make money on LinkedIn. He would say his about section is just about him. So he'd be like, hi, I'm Mark, I do this.
Yeah,
and I think it's good to fit in that. Sometimes it's good to mirror what everyone else is on the platform to feel more authentic. So I would start this, if I was you, Adam, would be like, hi, I'm Adam, and I think you're brilliant at what you do. Just like start it as a human. Just do you know what I mean? Like a human would do it. Or like, hi, I'm Adam, look, I do this, and this, and I think you're brilliant at what you do. And then I just go into it. I think for mine, I have the first line of my about section is, I'm a very ordinary guy with an extremely fast growing business. And that's just getting relatability. Like saying, I'm trying to speak first person, as it's like, I am Niall. Like, this is me writing this. The worst about sections, I think Stephen Bartlett actually has this right now. He's like, Stephen is a high-level podcaster with this and this. Please avoid talking third person about yourself in your about section. This is
I don't
not
think he really
Forbes
cares though the
bio.
amount of people that's following him in any way. So that really makes zero difference. But actually, just saying about that, I did have I always play around with my LinkedIn profile. It amazes me how many people don't update their profile on a regular basis. You know, I like to tweak things and change things around, and it's a little bit like, you know, redecorating your house on a regular basis. But you just become so obsessed. You're like, oh, that color scheme's out in 2026. I'll stick to this color scheme. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I actually just changed my about section 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll just go in. I'll be like, yeah, do you know what? I feel like a change, and oftentimes I'll optimize to make it more personal.
Yes.
Especially my about section in particular. So I optimize for more personal because, and this is where the split is, Adam. We talked about earlier of LinkedIn doesn't help you when you're selling. And if you look at what I'm trying to focus on doing right now, I'm actually pushing an event that we have live next Thursday, which I'll talk about at the end. But other than that, I will never sell on LinkedIn. I sell post conversation opener. So I'm doing pure value, get to know Niall, start a conversation, boom. Now, my pivot to sales is after I've sent the message to start the conversation. If you respond positively, then we go down the sales route. If not, I am purely marketing, which is something to think about as well.
Beautiful.
So fantastic about section. And then I'm going to get on to Adam's content.
God, here we go. Here we go. We're going to go. There's a lot of content, by the way, to roast, but I'm sure that we're not going to get through all of them.
Yes, I'm just going to quickly go through. I'm going to go through photos to start with, because generally speaking, when you look at the photos, first of all, I can quickly see that Adam has a lack of photos. He's using the same photos.
But they work. I mean, what's the point in changing something? It works, right?
And that is the irony. But looking at this, I think first of all, I think you have a good mix, Adam. So I like to blend when I think about it. It's just really top level here. This is not like go and action this today, guys, is just top level thinking of what we're seeing working. Generally, profiles that work well is the blend. I'm an authority with you can relate to me. Like simple things that Adam does well. I can see Adam looking dapper here in a suit. He signals authority. Here he's talking on stage. Massive underrated hack. Get photos of you talking on stage, because people who are on stage are authorities. No one who gets on stage and has a microphone in their hand aren't an authority. If you want to signal authority, we actually had a client who weren't getting booked for any gigs. So we booked out an auditorium for the day. We put a fake presentation on the door, put a microphone in their hand. This is a true story.
Love it.
We took professional photos of them speaking on stage because we needed to elevate their authority.
Beautiful.
No brainer, guys. It literally, if you can do it, do it. If you've got photos on stage, use them on LinkedIn. It is like a really simple way to signal authority. But the second thing Adam has is like these authentic photos here. He's there. It's a selfie with the laptop. It's really underrated just because it's like, it just brings you back down to baseline of a human level. And generally speaking, if I would have opened this and I would have just seen professional photos, so there's even like more personal photos as well, Adam up against the tree. If I would have just seen professional photos like this for every single one that was graphic designed, that would have been an instant red flag for me. Oftentimes people go to LinkedIn, they think, okay, everything has to be perfect, so they only put professional photos. You have to mix in, like, here's a selfie, here's something raw. I'll give you another example on my profile for inspiration. A lot of my videos are edited by an editor in high production. At 2 p.m. today, I don't know what date we're on, 10th of March, you can go back to my profile. At 2 p.m. I have a video scheduled where it's me, like this, with no captions. I have a microphone in my hand, a mini mic, but no captions, no edits. We have an editor full-time to edit my videos. I chose to do a raw video with no edits because I want to mix up. It's promo for our event that's next Thursday. I'm trying to mix up. I'm a human. Thanks for coming to the event, guys. This is happening. Because I want them to know they're talking to Niall and not just a guy who's in the distance getting professional edits done. Yes, I want professional edits to communicate what I'm doing and are engaging and have animations and change. That's fantastic. But I also want to level it down. So play around with that. Don't do one of the other ways, all authentic or all authority. You want that variation. And one of the best tips I can give from a content perspective is to vary around with it and play around and don't get stuck. There is no silver bullet. We all wish that you could listen to me for the next 5 minutes and I tell you exactly what to do and you'll fly to a gazillion followers and make a gazillion dollars. Guess what? If anyone had that, they'd never be on a podcast because they'd be a trillionaire because everyone on the planet would be paying them. So that's not the case. So I think Adam does a great job of varying it up. If I was you, Adam, I'm just going to check first before I lie to you.
There's a few documents on there, not as many as I'd like to, of course.
Yeah, I think I would throw in more deep dive breakdowns for you. I think I think the most of your content is leaning to the broader side. Even when you're doing niche sales posts, like this is a great story, it looks like, where you talk about, I'm guesstimating, but like a client case study almost of an experience that you had. Even that is interesting to a broad market. So I would try and go even narrower with some and just be like, here's 6 things you need to think about if you're a law firm trying to exit, and just go for some narrow content as well, like that.
Well, believe it or not, there was a post actually that spoke directly to a legal firm. If you go further down, and I think it had something like 10,000 impressions just off the bat.
Yeah, you talked about this.
It was really interesting. So it was really narrow. Content, and so that was like, I would say it was like really successful because you can actually see, if you've got LinkedIn Premium, by the way, guys, you can actually see the breakdown of who's actually viewed it. So in my case, it was all like law firm owners, and I think there were roughly 250 law firm owners specifically. I mean, hey, Google AdWords would not be able to get that type of infiltration just off the bat. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, 100%. So I think sometimes, Adam, you're a little bit in the fence of broad and narrow. If you've got some posts trying to do the same thing at the same time. So I would go really narrow with some posts and put them up and be like, I don't care if this has 6 impressions because all 6 people are going to get value. And then on the other side for you, I don't think you have any broad enough content. So here's a good example that I would do. I would say like 6 of the biggest exits over the last 6 months, just broadly, not even law firms, like just get curiosity, or like 6 6 of the biggest business sales of all time. 6 of the biggest private business sales of all time. So I'm going like just massively, I'm exploring the topics. I'm thinking about, okay, what are you talking about? Is exiting businesses. I'm going to explore that. What's the broadest way we can talk about that? And what's the most actionable, narrow thing? And I'm trying to do both and not be in the middle. So like for you, viral post potential that like gets the right people into your ecosystem would be like the biggest private sales of businesses in the UK over the last 20 years. And it's a carousel of each business and just like what they did, their sale price, their name. Boom. Next slide. Photo,
Beautiful.
Sale price, name. I mean, it's a great content format. If it does go viral, just tag me below it. No, I'm joking. But that's I would like blow it out of proportion and then go into it. So a good example for this for me, right, is a lot of my content is really, really narrow. So I'll do like, here's how to get my full LinkedIn outreach strategy. But I also might do 7 LinkedIn tactics I stole from Canva. And I'm using Canva because it's a big brand people know and care about. And the tactics aren't as good, they're not as actionable, but it's just getting a broader audience in my ecosystem. I think I got 30,000 impressions on my Canva carousel that did that. It was okay, but it adds massive people into my ecosystem. And then they'll get it with the narrow content. So that's the other thing. Other than that, Adam, like I said, Adam is tough to roast, is a high thing. If I could give 3 actionable things to take away, it would be like, I'd change the banner to have 1 CTA. I'd cut the headline in half and keep the back end of it. And the third thing is, with the content, I would stop trying to do 2 things with one, and I would either go broad, blow it out, how can I get as many people interested in as possible, and then I would go really narrow in what's the most actionable advice I can follow up with.
Beautiful. Love that. Some good stuff. By the way, that was a great roasting, because, sometimes it can be very difficult to roast someone that's, been on the platform for quite some time. Because, I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I just wanted full disclosure. But what I would say is, like, when you've been on the platform, you kind of been experimenting. Well, I've certainly been experimenting on what works, what doesn't work, and whatever it is. For you guys that have been listening in, by the way, let's just quickly summarize what Niall's gone through, because that was a lot of information, right? But for you guys that are listening to the audio, the 4 most important parts was the banner. So that was the first part. So he talked about the banner. Secondly is the headline. And here's one thing that I learned about the headline is, don't feel like you need to use every character. That's as in, because there's a restriction on characters, but don't feel like you need to use every single one of them. If it needs to be short, whatever it might be. So that's the second part. Third part, the About Us section, be personal. All right. So one thing that I picked up from Niall is be a bit more personal. And I actually, believe it or not, my previous story stuff, which was all I'm talking about, my golf ball story, I was very personal on that. But then I kind of wanted to switch up a little bit. So I'm due to revisit that, by the way. So I just wanted to point that out. And then the fourth part, which is the featured in section. Don't use old posts for featured in section. Treat it like real estate, prime real estate. Think about something that you want to promote, maybe a gift that you want to do if you've got a YouTube channel, something that they can take action on, right? That they're going to get further value by developing a relationship with you, by developing the trust. So, and just another pointer from me is, if you think about, people are using a lot more mobile phones to access their LinkedIn profile. I normally have a maximum of 2 in the featured in section, because then you can actually see what's in the featured in section. Otherwise, you're creating friction, because people have then got to use their thumb to scroll across. And you know how annoying that is, right? That's very annoying. So anyway, but this has been great. This has been fantastic. We've covered a lot of groundwork. Now, I know that we're coming towards the end of our great conversation, but you've got a masterclass coming up, haven't you? Tell me a little bit more about the masterclass that's coming up.
Yeah, 100%. Adam, that was a great setup. Next Thursday, we are live on LinkedIn with Dom McGregor, founder of Fearless Adventures, former co-founder of Social Chain with Stephen Bartlett. We're going live on LinkedIn to talk about how to survive in the new era of B2B. And me and Adam talked about a lot. There was actually a segment in here where I talked about the difference, where like what people are actually doing behind the scenes in B2B and where people are plateauing, keeping doing the same. Right now, there is the biggest shift in B2B marketing that's ever happened with the new technology, with AI, with the new platforms, with the new challenges, with the new channels. If you are not adapting to how you do B2B marketing in the modern age, you will get left behind. That will be detrimental to any marketing department or any business. And the people who are already adapting are not talking about it online. So we're going to go live with Dom Dom is always ahead of the trends. He was 10 years early to marketing on social media with Social Chain. He's got one of the most well-known marketing agencies on the planet with Social Chain. He's now investing in a bunch of different founder-led businesses on the front lines of B2B. We're on the front lines as well, working with some of the biggest brands in Europe. And we're going to go live and answer all the questions around how to use AI in marketing. Should you be using it? Should you be avoiding it? Is it a hype? What channels are people using? The strategies. I'll be diving deeper into the tactics we're seeing. Dom will be seeing the top level trends, what businesses are raising money, why are they raising money, where are they investing that as well, and all these different aspects. It's completely free to attend. As I say this, we have 200 people already attending. Last time we did this was in early 2025. We had 400 business owners turn up. We're expecting a similar turnout. It's free. You can find it. Adam will link it somewhere. It's also on my LinkedIn.
Very good.
But it's free to attend, and do attend. And we'll also be asking a bunch of different answering a bunch of different questions you have. If you have any specific questions, like Adam said about, or how do you do this, how do you do that, turn up with them on the day at the masterclass, drop them in the chat, and we'll be answering all those questions live. It's going to be massive.
Very good. For you guys that want to get access to that masterclass, make sure you go and follow Niall over on LinkedIn. By the way, you can do that. And you'll be able to see some of the links on there as well. What we'll do is also we'll put that in the post description notes as well, to a link to Niall's LinkedIn profile, but also if there's a link to the masterclass, depending on when you listen to this, of course, will depend. But anyway, best thing to do, make sure you go and connect and follow Niall over on LinkedIn, and follow him on other on places like YouTube as well, because they've got your YouTube channel as well. So very good. Anyway, listen, Niall, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much. This has been great. It's been fun, right?
Awesome, Adam. You're fantastic. I'm excited to get this out, and it's super cool, everything that you do. And if everyone should be following you already, Adam, but if they're not, they should go and follow Adam as well.
Hey, listen, for full disclosure, I did not tell him to say that, by the way. I just want to say that, right? Okay. But no, it's been really great. It's been really fantastic.
You said you were going to pay me after, Adam, for that one.
Damn it. The secret's out. Anyway, for you guys that are listening, hopefully you've got some great tools, and you've heard some great insights about LinkedIn today, and you've got your call to actions. And the only thing that I would say is that if you have enjoyed today's show, please do me a favor, head over to Apple or Spotify, leave a 1 or a 5-star review, whichever it is. We'd love hearing from our listeners from around the world. Anyway, from me and Niall, thanks so much, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.